Howdy doody. Welcome to episode 236 of TDI. This is Dr. O on the horn to start per usual. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, my best friend, and DC aficionado, DC multiverse aficionado, Ricky Flicks. How are you, my friend? Highly anticipated summer blockbuster review today. We couldn't wait till Monday. How excited are you to talk about The Flash?
We're getting nuts here at TDI today.
Let's get nuts.
You want to get nuts? We're getting nuts. Because The Flash, it was nuts. It was nuts. Whether you thought it was good or bad, I think that's open for judgment, and I'm open to both perspectives. But there's one thing that we can agree on, is that this movie was nuts. And I love how this movie was great for a fan, but I think as well, it was also good. It was good for both ends of the spectrum. And I think it hurt it at times. It helped it at times. And you could definitely see through it. Again, we'll dive in deeper when we get to spoilers. But I guess on the surface level, overall, definitely overhyped, but I was very pleased.
Yeah, so a lot of hype, as you said, going in. James Gunn, future, right, leader of DC Studios, claiming it's his favorite movie of the year. Tom Cruise hailing it as a great summer blockbuster, one that cinemas need. And Stephen King chiming in saying it's a spectacular movie out of all people. So a lot of praise, but then I guess from audiences and on social media, we've seen there's a lot of like blowback to this movie. And that's why we could not wait to talk about it. We made sure we saw it nice and early at the theaters. I'll go through the Rotten Tomatoes and we'll go through the synopsis. But Ricky Flex, I just want to talk about our theater experience a little bit. So if you looked online with this movie, you would say it is a classic DC movie by the way it's getting bullied online. And
I agree with that.
You would not get that same vibe if you were in our theater. Would you agree?
Completely. I want to just harp on the online sentiment. The online sentiment here for this movie is exactly what you said. It's a classic DCEU movie, but it drove down. I think it did drive down the Rotten Tomato score. We'll dive into maybe some of the reasons why, but I think when you're in our theater, we were buzzing. The theater was buzzing. And we were in an IMAX theater, a lot of people in it. It wasn't packed. It was not because we saw Across the Spider-Verse early as well. We saw that Thursday night. We saw this Thursday night. And we saw it actually at 4 o'clock on a Thursday. So I guess you can't it wasn't going to be a sellout no matter what. Nothing sells out 4 o'clock on a Thursday. But it was pretty packed, I would say. But the fandom was there. The Flash shirts, the Superman shirts, the Batman shirt. I'm wearing one right now. I got socks. I don't have flexibility. I can't get up there. Nope, can't do it. The fandom was there, and people were buzzing throughout the movie. Now, crap. Now my hip flexors are gone. Take over.
Oh my gosh. Ricky, I did see those socks. It was a bold decision, but appropriate for the Flash. And you really showed out with your DC fandom. You really showed me up. But you're right. Our theater was filled with people rocking DC merch. And when we go to initial reactions to this movie, if you are a DC fan, a true blue DC fan, not one that just joined on and just respects the Nolan movies, not one that just respects the DCEU, but just respects all DC characters and the history of those characters on the big screen and small, you are going to adore your time in the theater. You are going to have so much fun. Is this movie perfect? No. It's going to be absolutely disparaged online for the same things that DC movies are usually associated with, like shoddy CGI. You're going to basically target Ezra Miller. But when it all comes down to it, man, this was a fun movie to watch. And it's undeniably a great time at the theater. And I totally get when Tom Cruise is saying this is a blockbuster we need. It's not saying it's the greatest movie he's ever seen, but it was totally worth seeing this in theaters as opposed to waiting for Max to upload it in a couple months. We to have like this opening, people projecting 155 to 160, right? Worldwide opening weekend. People are saying it's a flop. I need people to go see this in theaters to truly appreciate the experience rather than just call the movie out online based on a bunch of clips that people are editing and like they're putting in reverse format and they're trying to make the movie look worse than the way it is. I'm calling out you, MCU fans, who are looking to deride the DC faithful.
I'll say this. This was the best. If you put this in phase 4, this is the best movie out of phase 4 at MCU.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, compare it to what has come in the MCU
Yeah.
as of recent,
Easily.
I take the Flash over.
This is better than Black Widow. This is better than Shang-Chi. This is better than Ant-Man Quantumania.
Eternals, all
Better
of
than
those
Eternals.
movies. Yes.
But I think, just to clarify something you said, just to help out your argument, you kept saying this is a fun movie. I totally agree it's a fun movie. But when we use, like, oh, that was a fun movie, or that was a great movie theater experience, we kind of use that with Fast and Furious movies. All right? And those movies, Scotty Furious, close your ears for a second, they aren't perfect, and they're not effective at telling its family story a lot. It's more as a running gag, but it takes itself too seriously. We don't. The thing why this movie's good is not just fun and also fan service, but it's effective storytelling around its central character. It's a good story. It's emotional. It hits all different facets of your emotions. Yes, maybe a little imbalanced at times and quirky at times, but the storytelling was very effective to go along with the fun aspect that you mentioned, and that's why this is a good movie. I think nowadays in superhero movies, and I think MCU has kind of been the main proponent of this, is that we're too reliant on the comedic aspect of it. And obviously the Flash and the Justice League over the Zack Snyder verse era, DCEU, he was the main the comedic character in that. So it's like this had to be the most comedic movie out of all these characters. But at the same time, this was the best story that we've had in the DCEU for an individual movie, an individual character, I should say, out of the DC characters.
Yeah, I thank you for kind of like bolstering my argument there, because when I say fun, it makes me sound like it's not a good movie, but you should go see it in theaters. This was a good movie. This was a good movie. And it's not like other DC movies. And people are saying, oh, you can't trust DC. Here comes the Flash again. Look at that Rotten Tomatoes score plummeting. All right. As more and more people see this film, this movie made you feel something. It wasn't hollow on the inside like a Shazam 2. Okay. You were laughing. You were laughing as you watched this movie. I thought it didn't have as cringeworthy of comedy because you have like the nature of the Flash character that's established in this DC universe. And I was grinning through a lot of this film. And I think a lot of that has to do with Michael Keaton, and we'll get to his performance here. But I think Andy Muschietti, I just want to tip my hat to him because I think he knows what we need out of a multiverse story, right? And he truly understands the idea of infinite possibilities, right? What could have happened that never was. Like he, along with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, what they've done with Spider-Verse, I think Andy Muschietti just gets it, right? There are certain things we expect to see, right? With this fatigue of multiverse storytelling. Yes, this is going to happen. That's going to happen. This movie did have some unexpected moments that had us buzzing afterwards. Characters we hadn't thought about in so long and couldn't have cared less. But now, DC fans, if they watch this movie, you're just going to appreciate what lengths Andy Muschietti went for this film. Any other thoughts on the theater experience before we jump into some of the performances here?
The theater experience overall, like, it's hard to say without spoilers. So I think I'll keep what I said before. I'll keep it there and I'll echo your thoughts. Totally agree. But I'll just mention the multiverse comment, just non-spoiler section here for a second. This is the best explanation of the multiverse we've ever had in a movie.
Oh, yeah.
Very simple, very quick, but efficient again.
A great metaphor.
Good metaphor. Like, this was very well done explaining the multiverse versus a Marvel that has multiple movies or shows like Loki, No Way Home, Endgame / Infinity War, trying to explain timelines and going back in time and multiverses. No, This was like 60 seconds, get it done, good metaphor, good acting, like just get it done so it isn't like a hiccup that you're thinking about for the rest of the movie. You get it, we move on.
Yeah.
Very well done, very well written, very well executed all around.
I know after we watched the movie, I turned to you and our father, who we saw it with, and he loved the movie too. And I say love, but like, yeah, I'll say it. I loved watching this movie. He definitely loved watching this movie.
He loved it. You can say it for him, but I have a crazy thing to say about him.
Well, I do want to say really quick. It was the best explanation of time travel and its consequences since Back to the Future. And that it's interesting because Robert Zemeckis was like approached to direct this Flash movie,
right?
And there's certain like callbacks, like references in this movie that like it's like tongue in cheek, and then it feels very much like wink, wink, a lot of it, but it works, But I was just piling on in terms of like, hey, like this was so explicitly told as opposed to like Avengers Endgame, where you're left with like tilting your head with question marks coming out of a bubble,
Yeah, you're always questioning something, especially with superhero movies, and Marvel is such a big franchise now. You always question, but here you couldn't. But I going back to like our theater experience.
Yeah.
So our father sat next to me. I was in the middle between you and our dad. All right. And if we haven't mentioned this before, or you're new here, because we get a lot of new listeners now compared to when we usually last talked to him, I think. He likes to talk to you during a movie. Okay. But let me start before the movie in the trailers. He goes to me, he goes, I think this is the most excited I've been since Endgame. I was like, what?
I'm like, hell yeah, let's go, DC.
I was just like, some of the people in that theater were like cheering, clapping.
People to our right, man, were going crazy.
Yeah, people to
anything. Michael Keaton breathed, they were freaking out.
It was insane. But like throughout, like our dad's like asking me questions. I'm like, bro, like, what do you want me to tell you? And then like the cameos come in and goes like, what's that one? I was just like, oh my God.
We'll talk after.
But we'll talk after. But this isn't a spoiler. I have to mention this one because this one got me. This one I literally got me so bad. So the first time we see Michael Keaton in this movie, like we see his face, he whispers in my ear, is that Christian Bale?
When he has the long hair and beard.
Yeah. I immediately like shook, like almost snapped my neck to look him straight in the eye and said, what did you just say?
I was just you should have just backhanded him. It's just, what are we doing?
Like,
this is your Batman.
What are we doing? Did you not see any of the advertising, or like, did you not see that we got these posters? You don't see the posters.
It's got the Batwing on it.
Like, Christian,
dude, our dad is so funny to watch a movie with. We were watching the trailers, and Mission Impossible came on, and it was just the previews. And you sit down, and he sits down, like whispers in your ear. He's like, hey, you missed 2 scenes of Tom Cruise running. I'm like, dude, we've seen this trailer maybe 5 times. We broke it down on the podcast.
But yeah,
dude. And then we saw the Dune Part 2 trailer. Like, this is all the content our dad provides. I wish we had him mic'd up. Florence Pugh jumps on the screen. Is that Black Widow's sister for like Dune 2?
No, but like during the movie, in the movie when Barry Allen's first running, he does a callback to his own joke saying he learned that from Tom Cruise. Like, come on.
Nah, he's a human highlight reel.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with some performances here. And we have to talk about the man that everyone else is talking about with the Flash, and that's Barry Allen himself, Ezra Miller. I want to get your impressions because a lot of people have their impressions of him before they even see the Flash. Right? How do you think he did in this movie as the leading man?
You could say all you want about Ezra Miller. And there were some scenes and some dialogue that is kind of meta to what he's been through over the past year.
Cringy joke. Out of taste.
Yeah. But besides that, you got to say he was good in this movie. You have to. This whole Barry Allen arc was complete in this movie. And you can't do this type of emotional journey without a good performance. And he did it. And he was playing 2 people, not non-spoiler, like, you know that. He was playing 2 people, too, that were the same but different, and he did well. He did well. Like you just can't deny. You could hate him like I do, but like holy crap, he was good, right?
He was the best performance in the movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
And it was like I loved Michael Keaton in this movie, but what Ezra Miller had to do, playing off two different versions of the same internal character, very tough to do because
You have to give him credit.
one is an established hero and you believe he's an established hero. It feels like he knows everything about being the Flash. And then he kind of gets a semi-origin story with this younger version of Barry Allen, right? One that he never got
Right.
because he was incorporated into like Justice League and he was introduced in Batman vs. Superman. We never got to see that. So we got to see like an established Barry Allen and an origin story at the same time. And the story, you could say like a lot of the characters were underwritten. Okay. They kind of like assumed that you knew a lot about Michael Keaton. You didn't have to really provide much backstory. Like you could say Supergirl was very much underwritten. But when it comes to Barry Allen, it was a well-written character. And it was then executed very well by Ezra Miller. You can hate Ezra Miller, and very much like deservedly so. But after watching this, man, I was like, I don't know if I should say this, but I wouldn't mind seeing him come back.
I see. I still think he should.
I'll back off the gas pedal here. I just thought he was very good in this movie.
I'll give you a different argument why he shouldn't come back. This, like I said before, it completed his arc.
Oh,
it completed his journey. Like he is okay now. He is like stuff to say without spoilers, but I think I'll just keep it there. His journey is kind of complete. Like they could just go off to the sunset with this guy
and just, hey, Wally West, you're the next.
Yeah, Flash. Or different Barry Allen.
Right. Exactly.
You could do anything you want. I
don't think they will bring him back. I'm just saying he will. As much as people don't want to hear it,
was that good.
He was the best performance in the movie.
Yeah, I think Michael Keaton was good, but not great. I don't want to say.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Michael Keaton. Let's talk about him.
I thought he was good. Okay, but like, lazy is not the right word.
So,
but is this like? Or you help me out.
Some of the dialogue, like obviously, it's like okay, we are latching on to what he was in '89 with Batman.
You're relying a little too much on it.
And when you first saw him, it's hard because he plays Bruce Wayne is so casual that it's not like, oh, he's definitely like channeling Bruce Wayne from '89. It felt like Michael Keaton was just being Michael Keaton for like the first part of this movie. But then when he put on the suit, you're like, holy crap, that's our Batman, dude. I got chills. I knew this scene was coming. I saw it in the trailers where he shows up in the Batsuit for the first time and he says I'm Batman and the Danny Elfman score starts chiming in. I was so happy, dude. My grin was going ear to ear. I was shaking and the people next to me were hopping in their seat. They started to clap. They started to freaking clap when he showed up in the Batsuit. And I know those people next to me had seen this trailer maybe 300 times before watching this movie. And no matter what, it still hit on the big screen. There is something about having him return in the Batsuit with the iconic suit. And it just got you flowing. It got you going, man. I love in the scene where he jumps out of the Batwing and with the Danny Elfman score pumping. It was spectacular. They nailed it. And they also had the moment where the Batwing goes into the moon. You got the perfect bat signal inside the moon. Iconic shot from Batman '89. I loved it. They knew how to hit the nostalgia in this movie.
They did. I liked his action sequences. That what we saw in the trailer. That's what we got. For me on the big screen, on the IMAX screen, it worked. There's other parts where it didn't work, but I think his character for the most part worked. And it sold me on a Brave and a Bold with Andy Muschietti a little bit, saying, all right, he knows how to direct an action sequence for Batman, especially with an older character. There were CGI issues with this movie, but I thought for a couple of those Batman fight scenes, for the most part, good. Good. And I would believe a Brave and the Bold with Andy Muschietti directing, which is the rumor that's now a fact, I think. Let's
get into that a little bit later because I want to talk about Affleck as well. But in terms of action sequence with Keaton, it was just so cool to see him wearing the suit and being a lot more mobile and seeing how much of a veteran he became and how much battle experience he had. It just sounds so nerdy to say it like that, but to see how confident he was, he could just step back in the suit and do his thing. It was really cool to see it in 2023 when we grew up watching those movies on AMC on repeat and on VHS on repeat. It was kind of magical. And Affleck, I want to talk about his Batman here. Not nearly the same sentiments I have for Keaton. Affleck, not a lot of screen time in this film. And I didn't like the way he looked.
I didn't like it either.
For some reason, he looked like older than Michael Keaton at some points, and the cape and cowl was like wrinkled. It was all messed up.
That's my problem.
Was it intentional? It just, his face looks so messed up. And this goes into like the classic superhero issue, CGI issue, or just like appearances of heroes. He did not look good.
Yeah, and the hype before the movie was, oh my God, he's got the gray blue suit, like not like the normal Batfleck suit that we're accustomed to with Zack Snyder. Man, you're right. His face just looked off. It did in the suit. I would disagree with you. I still think he pulls off Bruce Wayne really well. I think this was the best he's ever looked.
I didn't mean like that. I meant
you said he looked old
in the suit. Like,
yeah, I agree with that.
When I looked at the cowl and look at he had wrinkles all over his face, I'm like, okay, wow, he does look really old. He is not that much. What is he? He's mid 40s, late 40s, going on 50. Keaton's like 72. Like, he shouldn't look as old as Michael Keaton.
Okay, I thought you were saying he looked old, as in like Ben Affleck looks old when he was in a suit.
But I will say the action sequences with him as Batman and that first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, pretty good.
It was pretty good, but you didn't see his face.
Right.
I think when you saw his face, that's where it was the problem with the CGI. I think the little of Batfleck that we got in this movie, I'm sorry, but I love the guy, but I think it was proper. I think that's what we needed. We still got it. It helped set up Michael Keaton's arc in this movie. And we kind of like
the Batman was one character. That's great multiverse.
Yeah, I think it was effective, man. I know it wasn't a lot, but I think it was needed versus maybe another character that kind of took up time, not a lot, but Iris West, not needed at all.
No,
but in this movie,
a little bit of fan service, I think.
I think completely was fan service and kind of get her dues, and especially as kind of an origin movie a little bit, but not needed. So I'm just saying, I think Batfleck, little screen time, yes, didn't look good the face, but overall still good, take it, and needed versus Iris West, who was like, all right, that was just purely for fan service, and for me, I could care less.
It's just that when Affleck was first announced to be in this film, people were anticipating, okay, this is great. This is going to be the swan song for Affleck after we thought we would never get him again. And then Andy Muschietti was talking about Affleck early on, being an emotional center of this movie. In a way, you could argue that, but it's just, I think, a little bit hyperbole. It's not exactly what fans are going into the theaters expecting. I do want to talk about Sasha Calle as Supergirl. Getting a lot of praise online for one of the better performances in the movie. I have a take, Ricky. I don't think she's good.
I don't think she's good, but she's not bad. I think she's way overhyped too.
I should just say very average.
I have another take on this too.
Okay. Is it yeah, go ahead. Just fire away.
It's just going with your point. I agree. I think she's okay. She's not good or bad. She's okay. She does the job. But I think it's too easy to say Michael Keaton was good, and nobody wants to say that Ezra Miller was good. So who are you going to call on that was good in this movie? Because it's pretty good, and you can't say it's bad because it is pretty good. And you have to say if it's pretty good and you can't call out the star or maybe Michael Keaton, it's who do you have to call out here? Everyone's just defaulting to Sasha Calle, or it might be I think she's Hispanic, so Calle, whatever. I don't want to mispronounce it, but that's what we do on the drive-in. Terrible. But
apologies to Sasha Calle or Calle.
Calle, I think that's right. Double L in Spanish or something. I think that's right.
Yeah.
But point is, I think like people are just trying to hype her up. Is my point, because you can't hype up
Yeah,
Ezra Miller, and Michael
and
Keaton already's Michael Keaton.
you know what? She felt like a because she was wearing the Snyderverse suit, right? She was wearing like the Henry Cavill Hope and like has that connection with General Zod. Her character inherently feels like a Snyderverse character, you know, just doesn't give off a ton of emotion in this
Dark.
movie and very dark,
Uh,
brooding. Like, I guess
there's
emotion,
emotion.
yeah, towards the end, like to me, just more plain. I just didn't feel like you were giving me much, you know, and I couldn't make that connection that most people were saying like she's the standout. I don't think so. I think Ezra Miller and Michael Keaton were the standouts, right?
Yeah, I agree
I
with
agree
that.
with that take you had though in terms of like people don't want to say it.
They're just looking for someone to praise. Like, oh, let's put someone on a pedestal for this movie because we have to acknowledge somebody, but we can't acknowledge
And I will say a lot of her character is based on action rather than dialogue,
her
and
CGI was bad.
very underwritten character. And it makes a certain decision in this movie that I don't think was motivated well by the writing at all. And the action sequences, specifically with alongside Michael Keaton, I think did not look good. It looked very shoddy. It looked, a lot of people are making comparisons like a PS3 video game. Like, I kind of get what they're trying to say there. They were trying to make it look cool with some slow mo, but I mean, you're dealing with 72-year-old Michael Keaton, and then we got like this multiverse type of story that's kind of like distorted as Andy Machete's like trying to explain why it looks so hazy. I just don't think it worked completely, and I was anticipating that scene a lot during the movie. It just kind of fell flat.
Yeah, I think her fight sequences, the CGI was pretty poor. Um, I think the Zod fight, again, we saw in the trailer and all the advertising, not a spoiler. There's a Zod fight. I think that was pretty good. I think that wasn't as bad as the one you're talking about when she's like outside with Michael Keaton, not in the suit. That one was bad, like flat out bad, and it was like all I could think about watching that sequence. When you should be thinking about is like, oh, we're seeing Supergirl and Batman fight. No, you're thinking about how bad the CGI is, and I think just you mentioned it. Her part was too thin, underwritten, too
Very
thin,
thin.
too thin, and the third act had a lot to do. It was, I won't say chaotic, but you could say that. I would say overwhelming at times. And
It kind of like just ignored the other
it,
supporting characters. It just like there was consequences to their characters, but it just, what I don't mind is that it still all came back to Barry Allen.
right, and that's where the storytelling that we set off the top, that was good. So that's like the core of a movie. And if that's good, you can't like, yes, other parts are bad, but if that's good, then the movie itself works, right? Versus other movies that are just fun and fun to go to in the theaters, they don't even have that core. So it's just like those are bad movies. Like this is like has that core, so it's good. Yes, it has bad CGI, maybe some underwritten parts here and there, maybe a third act that's a little thin or overwhelming, I would say. But overall, like you got to give credit where credit's due. Ezra Miller is good, your lead actor, and the storytelling effective.
And I know we're going to get to the cameos and Easter eggs that appear in this movie when we do our spoilers after this spoiler free review. I just thought the more I think about what they did with the multiverse storytelling and the cameos that happened in this film, I thought it was so smart. And as I said before, it reminded me of Phil Lord and Chris Miller exploring types of multiverse storytelling that is sometimes smaller, okay, or less known or even forgotten, you know, and they were unflinchingly, like Andy Machete was unflinchingly like going after it in terms of like this movie is for the DC faithful. And that's why as a DC fan, I liked it a lot. It is just showed, hey, all possibilities on the table, right? We're trying to give fans something different, non-formulaic, despite this multiverse fatigue. I was just really impressed by it without saying any spoilers.
Again, I think a lot of critics that aren't core DC fans will say there's too much fan service in this movie. I actually would take the opposite argument because usually I kind of lean towards like, oh, like if there's too much fan service, then we just get into like, oh, this person's just in it and they're just getting a paycheck, right? I think this was actually well done. I think yes, there's some CGI issues and other things like that, but at the end of the day, I think the Easter eggs and the cameos here were pretty damn good. And
There
it
was
seems like,
effort put into it. Effort
yeah,
put into it. It wasn't just flash the screen. All right, there you go. You got what you wanted. It was like, no, there's more to it. It was. I can't wait to talk about it later, dude.
yeah, I think this is like kind of where if you are doing a superhero movie and you are thinking about doing like more fan servicey things, you look to this as like kind of like one of the stepping stones, like one of the core things you would look back to saying that's how you do it if you're going to actually incorporate it in the movie. So just something to get people like, hey, like if I'm going to see the Flash, that this will get you riled up. Like, oh yeah, this is all right. You're going to see something good. We're hinting at it right now. You're going to see some
things
crazy
you
stuff.
thought you
This
would
gets
never
nuts.
see. Some things you never thought you would see on the big screen. You will be able to see
This
with
is
this
going to
movie.
get nuts.
You got to see it on the big screen. Before we jump into scores here, Ricky Flex, Eddie Machete reportedly going to direct The Brave and the Bold, upcoming Batman and Robin film in the DCU under James Gunn. We have to discuss whether we think he's going to be the right fit for The Brave and the Bold. Personally, after seeing this movie, I think Andy Machete can make a good superhero movie. I'm not convinced he can make a good Batman movie after watching this. This has a lot of heart, okay? It's great to have that in a superhero movie. If you could somehow incorporate that in a certain way in a Batman film, it could be effective. But having the underwritten Michael Keaton here and I don't know, this is just more optimism in his type of films. Maybe we need that for a different type of Batman movie, but I'm just not sold that The Brave and the Bold should be directed by Andy Machete after this movie. What are your thoughts?
Before seeing this movie, I would have the same thing. Don't really. His resume is not that big, right? If you had to call out Andy Machete, you would think of Mama, It, and It Too, and then he's doing the Welcome to Derry as well on Max. Okay, all horror, and then he does this, which is you take DC's most comedic hero, right? You incorporate a Batman and a Supergirl, all right, and then you have a balance of an overall emotional story, right? Mixed with some humor and action sequences. All right. And Batman, you don't do humor. I think that was mainly the writing. That's not Andy Machete's bag. I think that's fine. Don't need it in a Batman Brave and the Bold. Perfect. The dark storytelling element, the dark horror elements that he brings to a Batman Brave and the Bold, I think will be perfect for and it's Damian Wayne. Damian. Right. So I think that will help.
Yeah.
I think that will help as well.
It's a great point.
And I think end of the day, the action sequences, they're going to realize the problems in this movie and they're not going to do it again for Batman. I really think so. And
there's a certain bar for a Batman film.
Right. And again, I think the Michael Keaton Batman action sequences here were good. It was the Supergirl, the supernatural elements that were bad. Right. And also the Flash, like the opening scene, not great either. So I think overall, the things that were the issues, I think we could fix those. And then overall, for a darker story, I think he didn't write this. Like the person that wrote Bumblebee and Birds of Prey wrote this movie.
That's true. Good point.
So I think
again,
at the end of the day, I was skeptical before. I still am, but after seeing this and kind of like trying to find a solution here, I could see the vision that James Gunn has. I think it can work.
Yeah, maybe I'm for some reason I'm excluding the it of it all. Just after watching this movie, I'm so locked in because obviously it's a DC film. But I think you could tell from this film he is a fan of DC. You know, just like we trust James Gunn with like Superman, he hasn't made a movie with a big name superhero. He's done Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, but we trust him with Superman because of his comic book fandom. If anything was proven to me from this film is that Andy Machete cares about DC. Everything about DC. So in that respect, I'm okay with him directing it. You know, it's just going to be interesting based on the divisiveness audiences. Like, what are they going to think about the guy who directed The Flash directing Brave and the Bold?
And I think you make a good point. He cares about it, right? And he cares about it so much he put himself in the movie.
Yeah. Spoiler.
Similar to Zack Snyder. And I think James Gunn sees like this guy cares. Like, if you think of under the DCEU, Zack Snyder, besides him, like they were hiring horror directors for all these DC movies, like James Wan. You know,
Yeah.
I think this one actually works because I think he shows a little more heart in
Just following the wave a little bit, how it's like Marvel was like having like the Rick and Morty and like comic writers that were writing, and DC was kind of going towards like horror wave.
Yeah. So I just think him as a director for Brave and the Bold, the horror element, the dark elements he could bring to that, I think can work. I just think the writing is going to be the bigger question mark. If they bring like this writer in for Brave and the Bold, then holy crap, like alarm bells start ringing. I will have problems. And I don't think the writer is bad. I just think for Brave and the Bold, I will be furious.
Let's drop some scores before we go on to some Easter eggs and cameos. What do you give The Flash?
This is a tough one because like again, these instant reactions are toughest pods to do. You could tell like I'm kind of all over the place, but yet I'm still spilling out some good takes at the same time.
You're on fire.
So like I definitely wouldn't say that, but I reserve the right, as always, to maybe adjust my score. I'm going 79.
Ricky, I'm going 85, dude. I'm going 85. I also reserve the right to change my score if I want to, but I had a great time watching this. I don't remember watching a superhero movie I liked this much, probably since The Batman, which I rated in the mid 90s. I loved it so much. My favorite movie, 2022. This was such a fun movie, and I'm definitely scoring this on hyperbole in the rush I'm on right now, but I really like this movie.
And sorry, one last thing I forgot to mention. I was just looking down at some bullet points I wrote down here. Just for the non-spoiler section. Okay. We mentioned Sasha Akai. Supergirl was underwritten a bit. You know who else was? And also, similar to Michael Keaton, kind of, again, lazy is not the word, but you kind of relied on him. Is General Zod, Michael Shannon.
Oh, no, he was just going through the motions, reciting the same lines from Man of Steel.
He was going through the motions like nobody's business.
Yeah, but yeah, I kind of get it. He might have been asked to underplay the role a little bit, judging by like where the script was going.
But like his comments don't help it either this week when he was like, I don't even like when he was like, what did he say exactly? He was like, I don't know why I'm here or like why I did this. He said something weird like that.
He felt like action figures, like you're just playing with action figures.
Yeah, you could tell that was his mood. Like, and that's tough because like this is a Michael Shannon pod. Like, we love Michael Shannon.
I think it was intentional, man. I'm telling you, like, they probably told him, just do what you did. You're reciting very similar lines. You're just talking to a different person.
But, like, remember, like, in Man of Steel, like, he was, like, yelling constantly. He really brought a lot to the role. If you rewatch Man of Steel, he's like, you won't kill me. Like, you will not do it. Kal-El, you will not do this. And, like,
I revised my two. I'm going down to an 83. I revised my score. 83.
No.
83.
He's already doing it.
Sorry. 83. 85 was excessive. 83. Okay.
I'm keeping my 79.
83. Okay. I reserved. That's my one change. I'll go down to 83. I will not go lower.
I'll stop talking.
That's going to do it for our review of The Flash.